The scout ship cut through the cloud layers like a blade, its hull shimmering as it shed heat and arrogance in equal measure. Commander Threx watched the jungle swell beneath the viewport and felt the familiar thrill of superiority. This world had been cataloged as resource-rich, tactically primitive, and emotionally loud. Humans broadcast defiance as entertainment. They would not last long once properly measured. Threx addressed the 6 scouts strapped into their harnesses, his voice translated into a dozen human dialects for the recording drones. They would taunt first, as tradition demanded, and then demonstrate control. The High-Clade valued spectacle almost as much as victory. Each scout carried armor that laughed at kinetics, rifles that mapped targets through stone, and sensors that tasted heat, motion, and fear. No species had ever hidden from them for long. The landing struts pierced the soil, sinking deeper than expected. Moisture fogged the lower sensors, and the air pressed close, heavy with rot and sweetness. Threx dismissed the alerts with a flick of his talon. Jungles always pretended to be alive. He stepped down and felt the ground shift, not unstable, but layered like memory compacted into soil. They advanced in formation, broadcasting jeers that echoed strangely among the trunks. The trees rose higher than projections suggested, their canopies woven so tightly that light arrived filtered in green. Scans returned noise where clarity should have been. Vines draped themselves like cables, and insects crawled across armor seams with fearless persistence. One scout complained of interference in his optics, and Threx marked the note for later ridicule. They spoke of humans as a scattered species, clever with machines and careless with flesh. Their cities burned brightly and briefly, easy to map, easy to strike. Here, far from metal and comfort, the humans would be softer still. Threx ordered a hunting sweep, eager to capture a specimen for the opening demonstration. He imagined the reaction back home, the laughter, the data spikes of conquest. The jungle answered with silence. Birds ceased their calls. Even the insects retreated, leaving a hollow stillness that pressed against the scouts' ears. Motion pings flared and vanished, never resolving into targets. A scout pointed upward, unsettled by the sense of being watched. Threx reminded them that fear was a chemical reflex, nothing more. Then a sound cut through the quiet, a single wet snap, like wood breaking under careful pressure. The rear scout collapsed without a cry, lifted from the ground as if by invisible hands. His armor registered catastrophic failure a heartbeat before his signal died. Threx spun, weapon raised, scanning branches, roots, shadows, finding nothing but leaves swaying gently. They formed a tighter circle, weapons tracking every angle, confidence cracking into calculation. Threx felt the first honest doubt coil in his chest. This was no panic prey, no wild animal lashing out. Something here understood them, had waited, had chosen its moment. Threx opened a channel to orbit, intending to report an anomaly, but static chewed the signal into fragments. The jungle swallowed transmissions as easily as sound. For the first time in his decorated career, Threx wondered if conquest required permission from the land itself, and whether denial had already been issued irrevocably. High above, unseen and unmoving, the tree hunter adjusted his grip and watched the invaders reorganize below. He had counted their steps, measured their noise, and memorized their patterns before they ever touched the ground. The jungle breathed with him, patient and old. He did not rush. He never did. The forest had taught him that time was the sharpest weapon of all. The alien scouts came at dawn, their descent muffled by the thick canopy that shrouded the verdant expanse. The jungle, ancient and damp with secrets, swallowed the sound of their ship's landing. 6 of them emerged, tall and lean, their obsidian armor glinting faintly through the mist. They carried weapons that pulsed with blue energy, scanning for heat signatures as they advanced into the green labyrinth. Their mission was simple: observe, mock, and record the primitive defenses of humankind for the amusement of their overlords. To them, Earth was a decaying planet clinging to irrelevance. Their leader, VRYNN, moved with arrogant precision. His visor swept across the undergrowth, mapping every root and shadow. Pathetic terrain, he muttered in his native tongue, his voice modulated and cold. No order, no intelligence. Just rot and chaos. His companions laughed in their static-filled clicks, the sound sharp against the forest's hush. They didn't see the jungle as alive. They saw it as conquered space, something to be documented, then burned. But the jungle had a memory, and something within it remembered the last intrusion. Miles away, crouched beneath the tangled roots of a banyan, the man the locals called the tree hunter listened to the alien chatter through a scavenged receiver. His real name was Elias Ward, though no one had spoken it in years. His camouflage, a cloak of frayed green and shadow, blended seamlessly with moss and bark. He watched, patient and still, as the alien patrol moved deeper into his territory. The jungle, his ally, whispered their every step. Elias had lived alone since the invasion began. Not the open kind of warfare humanity had once known, but a slow, mocking occupation by unseen watchers. The aliens came in small groups, probing, studying, laughing at what they found. He had seen villages vanish overnight, their inhabitants reduced to data entries in the invaders' archives. The world governments had fallen silent years ago. Now, only pockets of resistance remained, hunters like him, ghosts who refused extinction. He adjusted the grip on his rifle, a relic from a time when bullets still mattered. Modified and reinforced with scavenged alien alloys, it was a weapon of defiance as much as survival. His breathing slowed as he tracked the movement of the scouts through his optical sight. They were confident, almost playful, moving without formation, their laughter echoing faintly through the mist. When VRYN paused near a towering kapok tree, Elias saw the glint of arrogance in the alien's posture. They were taunting the jungle now, cutting into bark with a plasma blade, marking it as theirs. Elias's jaw tightened. He had seen them do this before. The ritual desecration before they unleashed their scanners to map and sterilize the area. But this forest was not like others. It was alive in ways they could not comprehend. He shifted slightly, signaling with a silent pulse from his wristband. Somewhere in the canopy, an old mechanism stirred, a remnant of his traps, grown over with vines but still functional. He waited, his eyes unblinking. The air thickened. A sudden tremor rippled through the ground. One of the aliens looked down in confusion just as the soil beneath him split open. Vines, thick and slick with sap, shot upward, wrapping around his limbs with crushing force. His weapon discharged wildly, blue light slashing the mist. The others recoiled, shouting in alarm. VRYN spun, scanning for the source, but Elias was already gone from sight. From the shadows, the tree hunter moved like the jungle itself, silent, deliberate, inevitable. The aliens had come to mock humanity's weakness, but they had entered the domain of something older, something that did not forgive intrusion. As the forest reclaimed its silence, Elias watched through the green haze, his pulse steady. 1 down, 5 to go, and the jungle, restless and hungry, was ready to help. The forest erupted in whispers after the first alien fell. The sound was not wind or insects, but the shifting murmur of roots and leaves, as though the jungle itself drew breath. The remaining scouts regrouped, their armor adjusting to a defensive shimmer. VRYN barked orders, his tone sharp with disbelief. They had faced armed militias, mechanized resistance, orbital defense grids, but never an enemy that struck without form or sound. He recalibrated his visor, scanning the thermal spectrum, yet all he saw were endless patterns of warmth. Animal bodies, wet bark, and 1,000 ghostly heat signatures blending into one. Elias moved in the canopy above them, each step calculated and near soundless. His cloak blended seamlessly into the foliage, dampened by mud and the humidity that dripped from every leaf. He no longer felt the forest as terrain. It was an extension of his instincts. Every vine was a nerve, every rustle a signal. He had trained his senses to move with the rhythm of this place, his humanity tempered by survival and solitude. Beneath the hood, his eyes were hollow but focused, his thoughts stripped down to function and purpose. The aliens fanned out. One scanned the tree-line. Another aimed their weapon toward the undergrowth where the vines had devoured their companion. Elias watched their pattern unfold, saw how overconfidence became exposure. They relied on their technology the way humans once had on gods. Blind faith in mechanisms they barely understood. He had learned that every device, no matter how advanced, had a moment of blindness. He waited for it. A low-frequency pulse rippled through the air as the aliens deployed a bioscan. Elias crouched low, knowing the trick, remained perfectly still, heart slow, muscles tensed like coiled wire. The pulse swept past him and returned to their handheld display, showing nothing but noise. One scout cursed, kicking a fallen branch. VRYN turned his head toward the noise, annoyance flashing through his visor. "Control your fear," he snapped. But fear had already taken root. Elias exhaled softly and triggered the second trap. From above, a cluster of seed pods burst, releasing a fine mist of spores that clung to armor and sensors alike. Within seconds, alien optics began to flicker. One scout tore at their visor, scraping it clean, but the spores reacted to light, glowing faintly like embers in the dark. Elias could see them now. 5 moving beacons in the murk. Targets. He took aim. The first shot was almost gentle, a whisper through the barrel. The round struck the alien in the neck joint where metal met sinew. The body convulsed and fell. The jungle absorbed the sound. The others fired blindly, bolts of plasma carving trees into molten stumps. The air filled with the acrid tang of burning resin. But Elias had already shifted position, sliding between roots, appearing where they least expected. VRYN fired a pulse grenade into the canopy, the explosion showering green light across the trunks. For a heartbeat, the jungle glowed, revealing nothing human, nothing alive but trees. Then a whisper came through the comm link, faint but deliberate. A human voice, low and resonant. "You don't belong here." VRYN froze. The words were primitive, yet chilling, carried by the jungle's breath itself. "Show yourself," he roared. Silence answered. The forest seemed to lean in, listening. Elias watched him through his scope, studying the alien's posture. This one was different, less reckless, more disciplined. A leader who would adapt. Elias respected that, in a way a hunter respects another predator. But the jungle was not theirs to claim, and VRYN's precision would only make the fall slower. When VRYN finally spoke again, it was quieter. "You think this world can hide you," he said. "We catalog everything." Elias almost smiled beneath his hood. "Then add this to your catalog," he murmured, pulling the trigger. A flash, a cry, silence. 3 left, and night was coming. Night fell thick and suffocating, a velvet shroud that blurred the line between man and shadow. The jungle no longer whispered. It breathed in rhythm with Elias, each exhale a sigh through the canopy. The surviving aliens moved cautiously now, their arrogance stripped to raw calculation. They had abandoned their laughter, their taunts, even their scans. Fear had reshaped them into something almost human, uncertain, hunted, desperate to impose logic where none existed. Their lights flickered in the fog like lost souls. Elias crouched high among the branches, his body still, his rifle across his lap. The adrenaline had settled into a deep, electric calm. He could hear their movements, the crunch of boots on wet soil, the faint hum of their weapons. But beneath that, beneath the mechanical noise, he sensed something else. The jungle was listening too, its pulse quickened by blood and motion. Vines trembled with anticipation. The balance had shifted. He was no longer fighting alone. One of the aliens broke formation, muttering curses in its native tongue. It was the youngest of the group, impulsive, trembling with the need to assert control. Elias tracked its heat signature as it separated from the others, pacing near a tangle of fallen trunks. It aimed its weapon into the darkness and fired, beams of plasma slicing through the mist. The light revealed nothing but steam and ruin. Then the jungle moved. Roots uncoiled like serpents, snaring the alien's legs before it could scream. The creature thrashed, firing wildly, burning through the very vines that restrained it. But more followed, thicker, stronger, alive with intent. Elias didn't need to intervene. He watched, expression unreadable, as nature finished what had begun. When the light from the alien's weapon finally died, the forest swallowed the sound whole. Two remained. Vyarwen's second-in-command, a soldier named Kale, turned in panic. "Commander," he said through his helmet, "this is not strategy. It's a trap. The forest. The forest is irrelevant." Vyarwinen snapped, though his voice betrayed fatigue. His armor was scratched, sensors clogged with spores, and his once impeccable confidence had curdled into anger. "We end this. Find him." Elias watched them circle, their formation tighter now. They were learning too late. He admired their persistence, even as he planned their undoing. Moving with ghost-like precision, he descended to the forest floor, his cloak blending with the mist. His boots made no sound. He felt the humidity cling to his skin, the soil pulse beneath his steps. For a brief moment, he remembered being human, before loss, before exile, before the jungle had remade him. Vyarwenen's visor caught movement. He fired instantly, a lance of blue light searing the darkness. The beam struck a tree, igniting sap that burst like flame. The fire spread upward, illuminating the forest in violent orange hues. Shadows danced across Elias's hood as he circled closer. The jungle moaned under the sudden heat, branches cracking, leaves curling into ash. Elias stepped into the glow. Vyarwinen saw him at last. A hooded figure draped in living green, eyes hidden, rifle steady. "You," Vyarwinen hissed. "You think you're defending this chaos?" Elias's voice was calm. "Not defending. Belonging." Kale lunged first. Elias fired once. The impact threw the alien backward, lifeless before it hit the ground. Vyarwinen roared, charging through the flames, his weapon drawn. They collided amid firelight and smoke. Metal against flesh, precision against instinct. The fight was brutal, wordless, inevitable. Vyarwen's blade sliced across Elias's shoulder. Pain flared, sharp and grounding. Elias countered, driving the rifle but into the alien's throat, then fired point blank. The light from the blast filled the clearing, then faded. Vyarwinen fell, his armor cracking open like an empty shell. Elias stood over him, breath ragged, the jungle eerily silent once more. He looked down at the alien commander and saw not a monster, but a reflection of what humanity had once been, arrogant, curious, lost. The forest rain began again, soft and forgiving. The fires dimmed to smoke. Elias turned away, vanishing into the mist as though the jungle absorbed him entirely. By dawn, the ship that had brought the scouts lay cold and abandoned. The trees grew around it, roots creeping over its hull. No record of the mission remained. But deep within the canopy, a figure watched and waited, guarding the last unbroken wilderness of a wounded world. The jungle would remember, and so would he.